Thank you so much for that. It was really interesting insight. And we're now going to move to the enigmatically named Zoom user, aka Chris Boardman, who's the GM Walking and Cycling Commissioner, who's going to give us his regular update on where we're up to on walking and cycling schemes in Greater Manchester. Over to you, Chris.
Absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed that. Thanks, guys. That was quite inspirational, and it's quite nice. We've got a bit of a positive theme going, really, isn't it? So, technically challenged here. Martin's going to whack up some slides. I'm going to batter through this. Brian's already touched on some of it, which is good because we're a bit tight for time. So I will dive straight in. You can see, like, the year of delivery is what we called this, and it's already, even at the start, it is shaping up that way. Some really potentially boring technical bits that you might think, but it's worthy of note that these targets have now been adopted in Greater Manchester's transport strategy document, so they're committed to now, and it's great. And they're bloody challenging for what we have to do in terms of active travel trips if we're going to meet the targets set out in that strategy. And we're probably going to have to go even further if we want to meet the carbon targets for 2038. But it's in there now, and that's really important. Probably most importantly, also in that massive, I think it's 65-page long document, there's the need to deliver the B network to achieve those targets. So it's adopted in that 2040 strategy. So moving on, stuff that Brian's already shown because we're all quite excited about it. The second Cyclops junction is already in, that went in a couple of months ago, as he said, outside Bolton Station. It's part of an impressive scheme coming out of Bolton around their town centre. I think really importantly, this was funded with no active travel funding at all. And it's an example of integrated delivery using standards, high standards, within a transport scheme. Now, we said at the start of our journey that ultimately we don't want a cycling and walking budget. We want it to be just how we do streets. And I think it's reasonable to say this is the first step of that, which is our ultimate goal, how we change just how we do normal streets. So that's brilliant. Another UK first, Brian, is also touched on, was the Sparrow Junction, the signalised parallel crossing, how it got its name, over in Stockport. So that's brilliant. I don't think Brian mentioned, but this needed the rules changed, and GM pushed and delivered this one first. And so now people around the country can do this as well. So another first. And as we found with some of the stuff that we're engaged in now and stuff that's still in the pipeline, leading the way means it's hard yards. And that's why it's been messy up to now. And it will continue to be messy, as it will if you want to try and do things before everybody else. And that includes things like side road zebras, which I'm not going to talk about, Brian, because we're not going to jeopardise that trial from getting to completion, not far off now. Right, a mega junction under the Mancunian Way. Had a difficult birth, this one, but a really important link into the city centre. It was painful, but improvements were made, not least to the timing of the signals for anybody who's tried it out, and it's pretty impressive now. It looks like a prop. I mean, that picture could be of somewhere in the Netherlands, so we are pretty pleased with that one. Just leaping sideways into emergency COVID response stuff. Just to mention on that, we had £3 million from government, which resulted in some significant schemes. And we know there was noise around that, but it also meant that we got in 50 new filter points that were delivered, meaning quieter streets and step towards those full active neighbourhoods that we want to see go in. And as controversial as it was, the longest temporary lane in the country on the A56, and although it's scaled back now, it will be made permanent. So think of it as 3 steps forward, 1 step back. And that's going to link Stretford Town Centre with the existing Talbot Road routes into the city centre. So I'm going to take that as a net gain from those emergency funds. Cyclops #1 in Manchester, that's performing well. Monitoring is underway there. I will bring back the results from that monitoring as soon as we have it. But anybody who's tried it, it is... I think it's amazing, really. And kids, we know that the local schools just round the corner there, you can now make a right turn without ever interacting with traffic. So it is, as Brian said earlier, a real game changer. 5 more to be delivered on the Chiltern scheme alone. The next one along is being built on Stretford Road, I think, as we speak. It's about 200 metres away. And it wasn't actually part of the original consultation, but Manchester City Council acquired more land, and so it can be delivered. So in the background, I might have mentioned this before, I don't know, 6,000 hours of officer training has been going on. So we've got 170 people employed across GM now, just to deliver, design, all of this stuff. And we're going on the same journey as London. We have doubled and doubled again the amount of people working on this, and it's still increasing. So I'm going to take that as good news as well. 19 million extra was secured to develop and deliver schemes on top of the 220 million MCF schemes that are in the pipeline now. And additional funding, I'll go as far to say, can be expected soon as the outcome of the 21-22 budget filters through. Trafford Roads in delivery. I think this is another one of those key points really that's linking north, south, east and west over to Media City. A huge barrier there in the road that will now be made safe for active travel. So year on year, the year of delivery, I think you can see it summarised on the slide there, so I'm not going to read it, but £100 million worth of schemes are being delivered this year, excuse me, on the ground, and you can expect to see it this year. In the background, another important step, it isn't there yet. This is going in front of the Combined Authority this week. My recommendation was for Greater Manchester to adopt these as their interim standards, government standards, which are very good, to make sure that we all figuratively and literally are singing off the same hymn sheet for anything we do for cycling and walking going forward. So I've got my fingers crossed that the CA, the Combined Authority, will see that that's a really good idea, and simply it's going to be required by government for future funding anyway. So get us ahead of the game. Getting towards the end now. Negotiations on bike hire are at the final stages with Ford Company. We've gone for what we might call a service model, which means that Greater Manchester gets to specify every aspect of the scheme so it gets what it wants, and it will tie into the whole R network vision for an integrated public transport offer. Contract awards are going to be, all being well, in September, which I am expecting them to be going well. And of course, as you know, it's part of a long-term integrated transport solution. So this is just phase one that we're talking about, and it's going to cover the regional centre. That's 100,000 homes that are going to have access to bikes, and the intention is to roll out and expand on that accessible installation as quickly as possible. So this is the 2021 map as it stands now. It already looks a lot better than it did last year, and we expect it to look different again next year. Lastly, we have a new website coming up, another thing that's had a very difficult birth. The media assets and things are being gathered now, but basically we wanted a one-stop shop for all activity in GM with interactive maps and everything else, and that is imminent. And there you go.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Wow, there really is a lot going on, isn't there?
Give me indigestion.
Yeah, so I think, I think the last couple of years, it's been apparent that these things do have a very long lead time, don't they? And, it'd be great to get to the situation we have in London in a few years, where every week, pretty much, something magnificent is being opened. But, there's a lot going on there. And I'm sure we've all seen, or a lot of us will have seen, changes in our local neighbourhoods. Again, Bury are actually doing some Cyclops junctions now and things, and yeah, so really, really heartening to see that. And and I think it's really positive and uplifting to hear how much is going on, especially for those of us who live in areas where it is a little bit harder to get through to decision makers, or where this isn't quite as high a priority, or it doesn't appear to be quite as a high priority as it does for some. These things are possible, they are happening, and we no longer need to point to other countries, we no longer need to point to other cities, we just need to point to the next borough, or sometimes the next street. Claire, do you have a point?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, if that's allowed.
Yeah,
of course it is. I'm not necessarily going to answer it, but you can ask it.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris, and for everyone who's spoken. As someone's just said in the chat, it's been really inspiring. Yeah, I think my question was, this people on this call, probably a lot of people are, very much bought into this agenda. And what would be your advice to people who do feel that perhaps they need more support locally from politicians? Perhaps they perceive that councils aren't bought in. Maybe they are bought in and they perceive there aren't. Or what's your advice, Chris, to people who feel that locally that political will isn't there?
Right. Well, it's not really changed much, I think. I mean, I've got I asked Martin to stick around, who very valiantly stepped in and just ran that PowerPoint for me, because I can't do two things at once. And Brian's there as well, so they might want to add to various things that I might say here. But I don't think it's changed. I think you've got to tell your local councillors what you want, and en masse, and tell them that you would support this. And I think it's okay to point out when people get things wrong and they're not right, but be careful about the balance. Because if it's less painful for a local councillor to do nothing, then you'll push them in that direction. So absolutely hold people to account, but also make sure you celebrate the good stuff. Because also people, if they see somebody else getting pats on the back from doing something good and for standing up for a cause, even if it doesn't work, then they want a piece of that. So it's just making sure you get that mix right, but ultimately make sure they know it's important. The more people they know it's important to, then it becomes more of a threat to do nothing than to do something.
Great. Anyone got another quick question for Chris before we wind up? No?
I'm actually doing this on my phone, Nick, so I can't see any of the chat. I can see things popping up.
Well, I've got another one about barriers, which is barriers. Yeah. There's so many stupid, inaccessible barriers in this borough, in this city region, and is there anything we could do to is it in the design guide? Can we just get
happening?
Yeah,
I think all I can say, it's happening. There's a real resistance to this. I mean, we've got 250 of them on the national cycling network alone in the area. Sustrans has cash to do it, and they need council support to take it out. And we know we don't meet our equalities duty if they're there. So I've asked the team and said, listen, we don't fund anything that puts in barriers that stops anybody with a double buggy or in a wheelchair or a trike, as in case of Harry's point. Harry, by the way, has agreed to join the Mayor's Cycling and Walking Board. I suspect this is going to be one of her major things. I think she's on the call this evening. I thought I saw her name pop up later, which is great. There is a paper that's been produced saying that we'd really like to see this across the whole region. We know it's an equalities issue. So I think all I can say is it's in the works. It's a legacy issue, and it's one to be unpicked. It's one of about 6. So we know parking on pavements, we know parking in bike lanes, we know this, and they're not just on the radar. We're starting the action of going through it. And a lot of that, as you know, I can't talk about it because they're not ultimately my decisions to make. So they have to go in front of the right people in the right order. But ultimately, it's the right thing to do. Where we do have a large degree of control is B-Network stuff and anything funded by Mayor's Challenge Fund. And in that case, we won't support it.
Okay, quick question to Chris from Newham.
Yeah, just a quick one, really. I was just thinking, I know this is more of a meeting type update. Is there anything, maybe I'm naive in a sense, how do we involve the next generation or awareness of what we're doing, what you guys are doing, and also how do we get involved in a fun activity where everybody can be involved in this? Because it seems it's only a certain age group overall, if in that sense, meaning the youngsters. Because if I'm not aware of this, then never mind the other generation, they won't know anything about it. You see.
Yeah, so I think it's great. I'd welcome it. I think I'd like to have a meeting with yourselves. I think I'd like to involve Eve Holt on the call this evening, and possibly Kirsty, who works all the comm side for us and is desperately trying to populate that website we've just looked at. So the wider we can spread the message amongst the people who ultimately we want to support it and will use it, that'd be great. And I would, welcome any help doing that. So
brilliant, because
let's get it together. Martin,
the reason I'm listening, Chris, because my nephew and he's just turned 16 today, so sweet 16 birthday yesterday, and him and his friends, I think they're more into physical games, playing at home 8 hours, 6 hours. And one of the rides, actually, I took him out physically. I kind of forced him, come with me, nephew, let's go. And after end of that ride, he was so surprised and so happy. He goes, I never felt that before. Although I play COD 8 hours a day with my friends, but this is completely different. The fresh air, the environment, and he was so pumped. He wanted to do it again. So
would you like to speak to my kids? Can't get them out of the bedroom. It's not good for my political career that I can't get them out of the bedroom. So,
definitely,
I'll ask you. Let's get together and talk about that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Kirsty's already popped up in the chat and said she's on the call. So I'm sure that Claire and Nick can help us sort that out.
Brilliant. Thank you very
some
much.
help would be appreciated.
In the chat, Chris, in a couple of sentences, because time's really getting on now. We've got a question here saying that you'll never get more than 80 or 90% of public support. How do you stop the 10% from derailing?
You can't. You can stop them derailing the schemes. You can't stop them. I mean, this all over the world. Brian might have some accurate stats, but it's something like 10 to 20% of people will never change. So don't try. You got a chunk of people, the majority normally will go, yeah, we'd like that. And then there's the middle group, and they're the ones you want to target. So you will never get unanimity, you know what I mean? You won't get it full consensus. There you go, I'll just dodge it. And so you don't beat yourself up trying. So, we don't have to. But I think what we do need to do, I'm going in front of the Transport Committee tomorrow, is stop letting the media drive it. I think if there's ever a time to be evidence-led, this is it. And I think climate change is the thing that is going to topically change everything, because here's your least shit solution. This is even if you hate this stuff, said it time and again, this is the least painful option available to us. And so I'm very hopeful it's happening.
Great. Okay. So we're bang on 9 o'clock now. Thank you very much to all our speakers. Just to recap, fewer cars doesn't mean no cars. And what are we going to do with all the petrol stations? Some fantastic ideas there. Brian's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on. Really empowering to see things across the country. Narayan and Sham there, really just spreading the joy of cycling, and it is so infectious just to see just the unbridled enjoyment you can get from it. And again, thanks Chris, year of delivery. It's really great to see all that stuff being rolled out across Greater Manchester. Just a couple of things before we leave. I've got an event here I would like to flag up called the Big Active Conversation. I'm going to put an Eventbrite link in the chat. It's a get-together for stakeholders interested in moving more in active travel. It's next Monday on the 15th. So if you're around for that, then sign up for it for all means, by all means. And again, really, the big news is the election's coming up. Again, we haven't got all the information at the moment because all the candidates haven't been announced or published, but when we do get that, we will publicise it. And it's, again, just keep your eye on what's going on in your area and push them to make this happen, because as we've seen with Chris, the expertise is there. It is happening in other places, and hopefully, that rivalry that we've been trying to get going is starting to bear fruit now. So thank you to everyone for joining the meeting, and let's keep in touch.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Good night.